Welcome everyone to Journey Through the Universe. I am really excited to have this chat tonight. How are you doing, Alexis?
Hello, everybody, and hello, Urania. I am
Hey.
doing pretty good. I am, I just said this before we went live, but I'm going to say it again because maybe everybody's kind of feeling the same way. I'm exhausted. There's something today. I don't know if it's because we're approaching the full moon and it's just really intense and we can feel the like pre-full moon energy, but something is weighing me down. I am so tired.
Yeah, no, I know
Other
you've
than that, I'm good.
and I know you've been going at it. Um, and right now, actually, as we're recording this on November 13th, there is a connection that's kind of building in, I guess, intensity between the moon and Pluto. On our YouTube channel, I just posted a video briefly talking about this and the significance of the moon and Pluto when they come into connection, whether it's through like an alignment, a conjunction, or a challenging aspect or a connection that we consider to be a square in astrology. That's a point of like pushing you out of your comfort zone a little bit. But I feel with the moon, like anything going on with the moon, a lot of the times we may mostly feel that like physically. So how you're expressing that you're kind of tired today, that makes sense in reference to this energy that I'm feeling with the moon, just where the moon is right now, and
Yeah.
that it just is about to reach its what we consider or what we call the waxing gibbous phase. And that's the point, like the phase right before the full moon. So this is when there's like, oh, I just need a release. Like there's like so much pressure,
Yes.
energy, and it almost feels stagnant. And you just want to let it go. And maybe in your case, Alexis, it's like falling asleep, like just like being able to let go and relax, so to speak. And so if anyone out there is feeling that way, I'm not surprised, especially if you have any like planets in Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, or Libra. That is where this is really strong. And I'll just add into with the astrology and the dream space, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow being November 14th. So a lot of you will be listening to this after the fact, but it's still, relevant as we'll still be in the veil of this connection. But the moon is making a challenging connection to Pluto, and the moon is in Aries. And generally, when the moon is in Aries, it can feel kind of like this restless energy and kind of like hot and like really sensitive and just like, I just want to release like this intensity, especially when it's like getting really close to a full moon. And so you might see that reflected in your dream space. Your dreams might be anxious or feverish. And it's really a good time, again, while Pluto is in Capricorn, to kind of pay attention to what's happening in your dreams, because 9 times out of 10, that's going to give you a deeper insight of the part of your life that is, ruled by Capricorn, that's coming up to the surface to bring to full completion as we're going to start this nice new long lasting, I feel, transit of Pluto and Aquarius. And so all this to say is that if you're feeling really tired like Alexis, like you're not alone. It makes sense. You're not crazy. There's a lot going on right now.
I wonder if like there's also that call to the unconscious, to like the experiences within the unconscious to kind of go deeper into yourself and like other dimensions or timelines, like you're needed elsewhere. Like I wonder if
Yeah.
that like that exhaustion is like a hint to go to sleep, to be somewhere else. I know that's totally like out there,
No,
but
that really
I was
makes
just thinking
really
about
makes sense.
all the different things that like that it could mean. And I noticed that when I am awoken from a dream that doesn't feel finished, I'm usually tired most of the day.
Yeah. Did that happen today?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like there was like you kind of like jolted out of that reality and into this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I'm thinking about, people that have planets in their 12th house, I feel that they might like be those people that live in other worlds and not just necessarily, yeah, like it's like in your dream space that makes sense, but I feel like there's a part of you that's always, somewhere else doing something else. I have a close one of my best friends, she has, I want to say, Mars and Venus and Leo in her 12th house, and she is like, that was one of the things that came up, that she's like really busy doing something in another realm, and like,
Yes.
because she's just so chill. Like she's a Cancer sun, and she just like, that's like, she's chill. Like she
Hmm.
doesn't really do a lot, and she just exists. And just her existing, one of the things that came up spiritually for her is that like her existence and her energy and her light, like she's here to kind of just exist, and people connect with her and not necessarily feed off her light. That's like the wrong thing to say, but that's what's coming to mind. But they basically are uplifted from her energy. And she is one of those people. I don't know anyone that actually hates her. But it's funny because, yeah, it really makes sense that, okay, she might be somewhere else doing something. And so I know you have planets in your 12th house, and whenever you go to sleep, like that's your thing. You have one foot in this world and one foot in another world. And so, yeah, I think there might be something to that. So if there's anyone listening who has planets in the 12th house, feel free to comment and share if you feel that a lot of the times you're tired and you feel that your spirit and your being is somewhere else that's probably doing way more work there, and you're feeling it here.
Absolutely. And to go off of that, like I don't know about you, but like the last couple of days, my dream space has been really, really intense and like a lot of time spent, a lot of like messages coming to the surface and all so different. So, so,
Mhm.
so different.
Yeah. Yeah. My dreams have been, I wouldn't say all over the place, so to speak. They're just like, I'm having series or types of dreams in chunks, I guess you could say, and then it switches. So for a
Hmm.
time I was having anxious dreams, then I had a couple nightmares, and then now I'm having these like very sensational or like profound dreams where I'm waking up and I'm like, oh, that dream, there's like, that's a dream. That's something
Yeah.
that, a strong message in that dream. So recently I have been having those that get me really curious and inspired to dig deep, even deeper. So I've definitely been having like, there's been kind of like fast moving series of dreams. So it's been a really busy dream space, that's for sure.
It has been extremely busy. And just like to touch on that, like I just want to give a little bit of an example of what like that dream space has been for me lately. Like the last couple of days, because it's I've had three dreams back to back to back that were pretty interesting. Um, the first one was, and I'll go through them really quickly just to get an idea of how different they were and how unique and how many messages you could possibly pull from it. So the first dream, which was 3 nights ago, I was running in from the rain to an Egyptian um an open Egyptian building
Mhm.
with like hieroglyphics on the walls, art, and they were all kind of split in two halfway down the room, and they were dark and like smelled of like chalk and dirt. And you could like I was in there taking shelter from the rain, and you could hear the rain echoing through this space so intensely. And within this like Egyptian building, I felt a clash of really intense like good energy, protective like energy, and then a clash of really negative, bad energy. And it felt like two magnets kind of like not being able to be stuck together, like when you have them facing backwards. And there were people that I would run into, but I kind of didn't pay too much attention to them because I had a motive. Like I had a motivation. I needed to be somewhere, but I just kept running from one building to the next in between to get out of the rain. And
Mhm.
then towards the end, there were these two dogs that started to run away from me that I tried to catch, and then I woke up. And that was like the first dream, which was totally like random. Like I didn't expect it. Like immediately I thought about you and your knowledge of, Egyptian culture, and I mean, even just looking behind you at that beautiful tapestry you have hanging out, I immediately thought about you and how like your influence plays a role in my healing.
That's true.
um and then of course the balance of good and bad, and trying to navigate through the world, finding that balance. The
Mm-hmm.
next dream that I had was I called the cops on my one of my friend's boyfriends, and it was really emotional, and she was really upset with me, and it ended the friendship. And
Mm.
like I knew I had to do it. I didn't feel good about it, and I kind of hung around the property while it was all being taken care of. And I remember like walking out of the house while they were all like arguing and crying and yelling, um, with their parents too, and just sitting on the grass out front, looking at the um, cop car sirens kind of like lighting up, and hearing them in the background, and knowing that my friendship was over.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then the dream I had last night, I was in the back rooms type of energy, and it was like a theater and a school kind of all mashed into one. And I had gotten a role in the Mean Girls musical as like the main character, Katie. And I was so excited, and I was so ready, and I was practicing, and I was going over my lines, and I was going to work, and I was talking to my boss about it. And I was just so excited for this role in this musical. And I remember talking about how there were some really significant actors in the play that were going to be aside me, and how excited I was. And right before I woke up, I started talking to them about how I was going to buy like conditioner to get like my hair like this dark red tone to match hers perfectly, and it'll look natural, and how excited I am for this like this part. And like so you can see those three dreams were back to back to back, completely different,
Yeah.
and really busy. Like I
Yeah.
just gave you a little bit of it, but they were so busy. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, if you're thinking about your psyche going through, just like there's these different, like there's these things, like there's something going on in your life. And I feel that each of those dreams are touching on a specific part or thing that's happening in your life right now, it's either trying to give you guidance or like some information about. And so because they feel just all different, like the
Yeah.
one in the Egyptian space, and then wait, well, the second one was,
Oh, I called the cops on
yeah,
my
the
friend's
cops and the
boyfriend.
friend and the boyfriend, and then the other one where you're in the play, you're in the Mean Girls play. So in the musical, which is funny because the Mean Girls musical was here just like a few months ago. I think it was
Oh,
like
that's funny.
and then the friend that I was like telling you about, she actually works in film, like behind the scenes, like she does set decorations or setups, and she like worked that musical. So
Ew.
that's a little cute little synchronicity
Ew.
for me.
Why? I'm
I'm
like,
like,
why did this synchronicity?
life is like intertwining.
Ew.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. I was like, oh shoot. So I've been staring because I follow the theater, the Landmark Theater here. I follow their Instagram. So I've been seeing in the past like couple months, like, the Mean Girls musical. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so nostalgic. I was like, I didn't know that there was like an ongoing like musical tour
Right?
of Mean Girls. So
It's such a weird coincidence. It's disgusting. It's so weird. I love it.
right? Like our lives are intertwined. It's so interesting. Okay. That's really cool. I do have a dream that I'm going to share tonight in reference to what we experience or what we're talking about, but it's a little bit different. So I'll talk about that when we get to, that part. So, but then I also have dreams in reference to the animals that we're going to discuss.
Yes.
All right. So, let's go ahead and get into our topic. So tonight we're going to be talking about animals and dreams. And we're going to specifically talk about bears, wolves, and birds. I'm really, really excited to talk about this. But firstly, I do want to just discuss animals in general in our dreams. And we have previous chats on different dream symbols, and we've talked about animals before. And so we'll definitely have to share an archive chat with you all very soon on what we've discussed on these dream symbols in reference to animals. So I have a book that I refer to. We've talked many times about dream dictionaries. They're generally hit and miss, and you want to take them. I mean, I guess you could say with a grain of salt, but like, it depends on the book. Like, I really love this one here. I recommend it. It's called The Dream Dictionary from A to Z by Teresa Chung. And she does a really good job of giving an expansive, like somewhat expansive symbolism and meanings of these symbols. And in the very beginning, she definitely one mentions that you always want to go with your intuition, your
Yep.
connection symbol. And this is just the general perspective. And she does a good job of also giving the archetypal symbolism to the dream symbols as well. So it's she does a really, really good job. So if you do want to get a dream journal or a dream dictionary, I highly recommend this one. I've been really happy with it. And sometimes usually it's on point. Sometimes I'm like, no, I'm gonna go with my own. But if there's something that comes forth in my dream, I'm really excited to, and I don't really know what it means. I'm excited to go to this dream dictionary to just see what is there, and then it gets my juices flowing to really analyze it and go deeper with that symbol or whatever came up in my dream.
I need to pick up that dictionary because I have several dictionaries. Some of them I really like, and some of them are just
Yeah.
horrible. But I've been contemplating that one that you have for a while now, and I really just need to get it because the things that you have shared, I enjoy. And also the archetypes, mine don't really touch too deeply on the archetypes. And I think that would be really interesting to dive into.
Yeah, and I know it was only like $10 at Barnes and Nobles. I think on the book it says $18, but yeah, I guess they had it discounted. I think I got it in a discounted aisle for $10. So I'm like, yes.
They do like a cycle where like they'll take different books that are kind of like this spiritual and just throw them on a discounted price, and it's really helpful.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. So, when it comes to animals and dreams, I like what she presented here. So I'm just going to go over just like a short explanation of animals and dreams. She also provided a few ways to kind of analyze your dreams or when you have an animal show up, and I thought that was really helpful as well. And it inspired me to look deeper at the animal from her prompts. And so she suggested that an animal in a dream is essentially an aspect of you that is instinctual, hidden, or striving for recognition. It could also represent a part of yourself that you find hard to control. And so there's that wild nature, especially, if it's a dog or a cat, that's a little bit different. Like if it's a domestic animal, say like even a rabbit where they're kind of borderline, and that's when you have to go a little bit deeper within the dream. Did it feel like an animal companion, like a pet, or did it feel like a rabbit that you see outside in your backyard? And even with that, they are closer to us than say like a bear or a wolf. And so you want to take that into context of like the wild nature of the dream. And I feel the more wild an animal is in reference to your dream, that could definitely speak to a part of you that's wanting to just be wild, be free, and be independent.
Context is so important when it comes to any of your dreams, but animals is a really good example of how context matters. Is the rabbit, hurt, dead, decomp? Is it a baby? Are they running? Are they stopped? Are they aggressive? Are they like nice? Like there's so many different ways to interpret an animal personally to you. So definitely when you're writing it down, talk about the behavior, the environment, what they looked like, how they acted, all of the things that really help to guide you towards your own personal interpretation.
Absolutely. And Teresa Chung also mentioned, she does a good job at mentioning Jung and Freud's perspective as well. And of course, as you would expect with Freud, I hate to say that it definitely had to do with sexuality and
Yes.
still repression.
Probably raw passion.
Right, raw, like fierce, instinctual sexual power. However, with Jung, he spoke to more of like, again, analyzing the characteristics of the animals in the dream, and of course their association with you, the dreamer. And he mentioned that the animals in our dream can represent the divine side of the human psyche, because the animals are so much closer to nature, that spirit of nature, the wisdom of nature, that raw instinctual like essence and connection to this world. And so when we see them showing up in the dreams, they represent a part of us that is wild and free, and that's essentially our teacher, right? A teacher in
Mhm.
those matters, right? It's specific to what that animal represents. And so it's like a divine essence coming through in the dream space. And so I really enjoy that perspective of Jung. And I feel that that's the way in which most of the time I feel the animal to show up in the dream, unless it's like, which I'll share, as far as like a dream where I feel like attacked or I'm running from
Mhm.
an animal, then that's a little bit different, but it still is, there's a lesson there. And there's a lesson always in dreams.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really interesting. We talk about Freud and Jung a lot and how, or we have mentioned it in the past during our dream chats, but Freud has such a very specific and narrow scope of what these all mean and what dreams mean in general and what dreams are in general. I feel like his scope is really narrow. So even though he contributes significantly to dream research, that narrow scope is so limited and so specifically biased towards his own experience, where Jung has such a broad and wide understanding and explanation and ideas for where it goes, which is why we tend to lean more towards Jungian understandings over Freud.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Because it's like it just stop, it's all sex, right?
It
And
is.
like it
It
can
can be,
represent your sexual
absolutely.
passion and desires, but that's not the
But
end
even
all.
sex in dreams doesn't usually mean sex in like in your waking world.
Yeah.
Like when you have sex in a dream, a lot of the times it's a message or an understanding of different aspects of yourself that you need to face, or
But
what
like
you're going
creative,
through.
creative energy, creative power,
Yes, like
may or may not
conception and
be like
birth, and
cycle.
yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to bring that up because no hate to Freud, but his limited his limited scope and his extreme biasness that he puts into his work, I just feel like is limited in for us.
Yeah.
We we just prefer more.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so there are she presented basically 3 points in which to analyze, an animal's representation in your dream if they show up in your dream. And so the first point or question is to um, analyze whether or not, or to analyze, I'm sorry, how you personally feel towards this animal. So what are your specific feelings and connections to this animal? So say if you have a cat that shows up in your dream, if you're someone who loves cats, you identify as a cat sometimes, myself. Then if a cat shows up in your dream, you're like, oh my gosh, this is my family, this is a divine message. But if you're someone who doesn't like cats, and she gave an example, if you're someone who maybe is allergic to cats and you see a cat in your dream, for you, if you're allergic in waking life, that seeing that cat in your dream might represent illness, right? And so this is where we really see that your personal relationship, your own personal connection to the dream symbol, to the animal, is most important above all else, right? Above any definition that you might get in the dictionary. So that's the first place to start when you're analyzing an animal in your dream or a dream symbol in general.
I think it's really important to acknowledge too the unknown aspects of what these creatures coming into our dreams are like. I mean, how do they feel? Do they feel, you know, and I'm going to describe this as if I'm describing like dream people, because it's like, are you able to interact with them? Are they able to interact with you? Do they feel bigger than your dream? Do they feel more powerful than just an expansion of yourself? Are they more like NPC? Like where how does that affect the interpretation in your dream? Because, you know, even talking about cats and like how like I always bring up Coraline with this, like how the cat can go from the real world to this other world, and like how, you know, the possibility of cats being able to enter into like your dreamscape, or like, you know, the idea of spirit guides, you know, coming through as a dream, you know, coming through into your dream. It's very interesting.
Yeah. The second point is to also consider the way in which the animal makes you feel within the dream, like within the context of the dream. And so, again, coming to the cat example, if you're allergic, I feel 9 times out of 10 in a dream, you're going to want to keep your distance. And I feel it would be really profound if you're allergic in waking life, but then you're snuggling up with a cat in your dream and you're just all about them. I feel like that would be really, really interesting and profound for the dreamer who's allergic to cats. So you want to really take note of that feeling. The feeling and the emotion really it tells you so much in a dream. If you can't remember much about the dream, if you remember the feeling or emotion that you experienced while in the dream and then waking up in response to the dream, that can give you so
Mm-hmm.
much information to dive deep.
Yep.
And then the third point was to also consider the aspect of yourself in the context of the dream. And so, should you tell yourself whether to nurture, okay, sweetie, go tell that. Sorry. So basically think about yourself and think about the animal and the instinctual qualities of the animal. Do you feel like you connect to that? So again, thinking about the cat, right? And the cat as far as it being, very comfortable in other realms and being able to like have this expansive like dream space or sleep space. They sleep all the time, right? So how do you feel about that? Do you relate to that, or is it something that feels, like they're wasting time? There's so much to do. Does it give you anxiety? Just as an example, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, you want to consider that animals' natural instinctive abilities and actions and relate to that in a way, like kind of reflect on your relation to that, which I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good way to reflect on the animal.
Absolutely. And real quick, I want to bring this up. It's so funny that you're using cat as the example, like we've been using cat as the example today, because yesterday when I was creating the graphic for today's chat, I did the whole thing and I finished it. And I was like, this is perfect, da 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 da. And then I looked at it and I realized that even though it said, you know, birds, wolves, and bears, I did a bird, a wolf, and a cat in the
Really?
drop. Yeah, I sent it to you. I don't know if you
You
saw it.
sent
It
it.
was
I saw your message. You were like, oh, I saw you mentioning that it was a mistake, but I didn't really like because I saw it early in the morning, like just waking up. So I
I
didn't. I'm
spent so
gonna have to
much
go back and
time
look.
doing this freaking cat drawing, and I was like making it specific, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm done. And I look at it and I'm like, Alexis, you're such a fucking idiot.
Yeah, I was like, this looks amazing. Where do you like? I didn't even notice. So I have to go back. Mind you, I probably looked at that at like 6:30 in the morning, like just
Yeah.
woke up. So yeah, I
Yeah,
have
I
to go back
definitely
to that.
sent it probably at like 2 a.m. So it
So
was,
we were really the synchronicity. So yes, we're cats are in the conversation somehow. That was precognitive right there.
absolutely.
So one example that I want to give, it's not one of the animals that we're talking about tonight, but it was a dream that I had this morning, and it's really short, really. The only thing I remember, or when this was actually an insect that showed up was in my dream, it felt, aside from everything that was happening in the dream, like there was a lot happening before, there's a lot happening afterwards. But I really and I remember all of that, but I really remember this part of the dream. And I remember I was outside. I think I was at a picnic table, or we were at some kind of market. And I was at the picnic table, and a bee kind of came up, you know how bees do, like they'll sniff you out or whatever, and they'll like kind of buzz around. And I just stood there and I was like, I'm just going to be still. I'm not going to freak out. And for context, I don't necessarily like bumblebees. I love bumblebees. Honeybees, I'm fine with, like, I'm fine with bees. Like, I will usually kind of stand still, let them say hello and like do what they got to do and move on. I do
Mhm.
feel a little bit anxious because I don't want to get stung. Like it
Yeah.
sucks. It doesn't feel that great, but I know if you don't like freak out and just like then they'll go on about their business at some point.
Yep.
So that's basically what happened in the dream. I was like, I'm just gonna stand here and like do what I'm doing. I'm gonna let them say hi and then move on. And it stung me. But the funny thing is, I didn't feel it in the dream. I just realized it.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait, they injected like first of all, it didn't die. And honeybees and bumblebees die. It wasn't like a wasp or anything. So after the fact, I didn't realize that in the dream, but after the fact, I was like, that's interesting. Um, but I think it like injected me with something, and I was really focused in what it injected me with. Um,
Ooh.
it was like some sort of nectar, but it looked like little bubbles. Like,
Okay.
it was weird. And it didn't feel painful. I didn't have a reaction. I was just really, really inquisitive about it. And so when I looked at like in the dream dictionary, it did say something about, of course, like your work, your productivity, but it also said something about like it wasn't a good message about the bee. Like it was like misfortune or something. And I was like, I didn't really feel like that, although a lot of the dream had to do with like resources, I think, and trying to get by. Like I was with some friends of mine and we were trying to like it was a weird dream. But I didn't feel like I felt like in the dream, I felt like that was a good sign. But of course, reading the dream dictionary, I was like, wait. So that's just an example of how you can have like I'm trusting my own intuition because I have a different response to what like a feeling than what I read. And also I'm like waiting it out to see. I'm like, okay, what's really gonna happen here? Like, what is this be representing? And this year I've been even more like closer and attentive to bees. And so I don't know. They just had there's something there. So
You know,
that was
that
yeah.
is such an interesting dream. And right off the bat, my brain went to, okay, maybe this symbolizes the way that you deal with pain now in your life, like any kind of pain, how it affects you and how you're able to like move through it. And then I was looking, and the first thing that I saw when I pulled up the bee in my dream dictionary just now, when you were talking about that, is honey made by the bees often symbolizes the elixir of life. If you were so like the fact that you were injected with
Yeah.
that, it just kind of it was like, okay, well, it wasn't painful. It was almost like a gift.
Yeah. That's what it felt like. It felt like I was like, oh, okay.
That's really,
And
really
and it's
interesting.
funny because recently, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not going to give you my whole password, but like my password for like my things is like honeypot. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's other parts
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
for like numbers and stuff. But like that was my focus a couple months ago. Like I was really into the honey pot. And it had to do with, like some sort of spiritual, like intentional things I was doing as far as like money and just like that pleasurable life, like the honey pot and what that represents. And so you just brought that to mind just now. I was like, oh yeah, like I did, connect with the honey pot and all of that. So
So
that's,
what I have, so I find this interesting because what you told me from your dictionary said that it was a bad omen, but like what I was briefly reading up on this, it doesn't seem to be that. There's negative qualities about it in here, but there's a lot of like the production of food for the souls, higher emotions, candles for celebration and enlightenment, or like strengthening your connection with your higher spiritual powers, reflecting on your identity. And then it talks a little bit about the ancient lore and mythology around bees. And they mostly seem to be very good signs. So that's so interesting.
yeah. And I would say, as far as in my waking life, the past like 2 or 3 days, I've been like a very busy bee. Like I've been very productive.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I have energy. So I'm taking advantage because
Taking
lately
advantage.
I've just been like flatlined with energy. And so I've like, how many things I can do in a day? And so that kind of, I feel that energy too.
I love that. You can get so much out of it. And like you said, this is a good this is a good representation of how dream dictionaries help you get to where you need to go, but they don't always give you the answers.
Yeah. So I like that we just hit, those 3 points to consider when looking at the animals. You want to consider your personal relationship with the animal, in this case, the insect, then their instinctual qualities and your feeling towards them. And then I don't even think I mentioned this one, but like the archetypal qualities as well as something. So like, what do they represent spiritually and like that deeper meaning?
Yep.
Awesome. And so let's go ahead and finally get into specific symbols for tonight.
Oh my God. I didn't even realize that
Yeah, I
we just
know.
were going on and on.
40 minutes in, yes, and we have not got to our designated symbols, but I feel that we'll do a good job of
Yeah.
really giving an overview of this. So let's talk about the first one. We're going to talk about wolves because I feel that wolves are a bit like straightforward in dreams. And Alexis and I, I mean, well, I'll speak for myself. I haven't really had any dreams specifically about wolves. I've had a dream about a animal, a dog companion of mine that is a hybrid, a husky wolf hybrid, and that's the closest to wolves I've had in my dreams. But from my dream dictionary, she mentions that wolves represent a possible feeling of being threatened by other people, or maybe you feel vulnerable in a current situation that you're experiencing in your life. Also, for me personally, when I thought about just the nature, the instinctual behaviors of wolves, I thought about how they travel in packs. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if you're seeing wolves in your dreams, possibly it can also point to just needing support and protection from those that you love, or maybe you are going to be asked to give a little bit more support and protection. And so, and then the loyalty aspect, of course. And I also
Absolutely.
came across that connection to repressed
Mm-hmm.
sexuality and anger. I can definitely see anger for sure, because wolves
Oh,
can
for
be
sure.
ravenous and scary, especially when you think about how they're depicted in media,
Mm-hmm.
where wolves aren't really like, from what I've learned about them, they're not necessarily attacking, like they're not going to seek you out and attack you. But when you look at them in media, especially like Disney,
Yeah.
they are like, oh my God, the big bad wolf. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I got from the symbolism of wolves.
I love that. And I also agree with you in regards to representation in my own personal dreams. Though I've had many dreams of dogs, canines, I haven't had that I remember at the moment many dreams with wolves. And if they were in my dreams, they were such a far, it was almost like a part of the background or a part of the backdrop of the dream, like the environment. It wasn't the main focus.
Mhm.
But what I got from wolves, I got a lot of the same things as you. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that they're like dogs, canines are generally thought to be like pathfinders.
Mhm.
So, the direction in which the wolf is going could be a representation of them pointing you in the direction of your life where it needs to go, following the wolf, following the path, figuring out what that leads to for yourself. And then I got death and acting as an animus. So like you said, the big bad wolf, it's the it's the sneakiness, the luring you in and then eating you type of energy. Like maybe somebody is wearing a mask and or their intentions are harmful, but they're putting out energy that makes you think otherwise. There's this aspect in your life that could be representative of that. And it could also represent the woman archetype, specifically like wild woman, like getting really in touch with your like raw, powerful, strong inner self, that just wildness within you. The search for towards inner work and self-reliance. Self-reliance is a big one that I've found where like wolves are very, even though they go in paths, them generally they are independent. They kind of like represent almost like a strong, like something you would follow, and it represents that self-reliance, feminine wisdom, strength, and courage. And then I wrote this down because I really liked this sentence. It also represents untamed impulses of the unconscious, so behaviors that you don't have control over, or aspects of yourself that kind of run wild, run amok, and need to be tamed. Um, you know, Tackling your mental health and how you treat others around you. It could be representative of needing to observe how you are and make changes to better your reactions, better your behavior, better yourself. And I got my information from a couple ones, but I use this one mainly, the Cloud9 Dreamers Dictionary, and this is by Sandra A. Thompson. I highly recommend this one as well. I think she goes pretty in depth with these topics and symbols, and I like it. Um, some dream dictionaries, it's so like short and
Yeah, it's just like,
there's not much to it.
yeah. What you know what keeps coming to mind right now as we're talking about wolves and speaking of that we spoke on, our personal connection to the wolves and their instinctual nature, what they represent, and even what we see them represent in our culture. When I think about it too, I that archetypal connection to the wolf, I for whatever reason the jackal is coming to mind, and I think that when you mentioned that luring someone in, like,
Mm-hmm.
Riding Hood, and that kind of trickster energy,
Yep.
almost like devil, like sort of, I get that with the jackal. And so I don't really
Mm-hmm.
know much about jackals, but that's something that I might just briefly kind of look into real quick because I'm curious about it as it came through with this discussion. And with my dream space personally, as I mentioned, I don't really have many dreams, I didn't have dreams about wolves at all. The closest was is my dog companion. And um he was always, there's been probably like two or three times, or maybe actually there's been several times, and not always, but recently he's been very protective. Like I actually, he was in my dream this morning and he was very playful. And he was in a dream months ago where there was a lot going on and I was traveling and he was on a road and pretty much almost like a crossroads because I was coming up to a point of where it appeared that the road disappeared and it was almost like that disappearing, right? Because there was basically like a gap in between this road and then like the next road, like you had to kind of jump
Hmm.
one to one the other. It felt like jumping into another timeline or another reality.
Hmm.
And he was like right at the point where I was coming up to that end where I would have to jump. So it felt like in that case, now I'm thinking about dogs as like gatekeepers and how they do
Yeah.
at thresholds. And I mean, that's not necessarily a wolf thing, but like dogs are, you know, descendants of wolves,
Yep.
so to speak. So that came through and protecting that and guarding that in that path,
Hmm.
you know, finder, right, to travel with dogs to, you know, find your way. Um, and then a few years ago, and this is when my dog lived with me, you know, in my home. I would, and he, I mean, he looked like a wolf, like, and he was all white. So he's very ghostly. And so in the middle of the night, he was already scary. And I had dreams of him being on the side of my bed and like very, very scary. So he showed up in more of like an intimidating way, like that big bad wolf way. And yeah, so I'm just like now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, you know, he has shown up in many different ways, but it's always been this specific dog that is a wolf hybrid that is connected. You know, I have a personal relationship, but I haven't had any dreams about any random, you know, just wolves that in general.
Yeah, I haven't either. And, I'm sure it's something we're going to dream about this week because that's just
Probably.
how it works. But, it was something where, like, I was looking at my dream journal. I was going through all of my dreams and I could not find one dream where I had a wolf show up.
Yeah. All right. So our next animal tonight is bears.
Hmm.
And in my dictionary, she really emphasized, or the first go-to was the mama bear, which I feel
Yep.
most people, you know, we mostly definitely think of the mama bear quality when we think of bears, and just kind of that they're very wild. Like wolves are
Yes.
wild, bears are very wild, and yeah, I just connect to that wild nature. And personally, I lived for about 10 years in Colorado. And with black bears, I definitely have a respect for them. And
Hmm.
I don't necessarily need to cross their path, but I have this really like cozy and at this point nostalgic connection with bears because where I lived in Colorado at one point was like right up against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And so
Ooh.
we had bears like coming through and there I would see them pretty often in my neighborhood. Like if I was coming home from going out at night or working late, you know, you would see them kind of running in the neighborhood. There were like we went through like several trash cans because like you have to have bear proof trash cans there,
Yes, you do.
like go through them. Like we went through many trash cans because they know like to throw them around and whatever they do. And I was really sad. I didn't see this bear, but one of my roommates, she had looked out her window. It was like late at night, really late. And there was like a mama bear and a cub just like sitting in our front yard. And I was just
Oh.
I love it. I love it so much. And so I have a really sweet connection with bears, but in my dreams, not so much. And recently I've had two different dreams, two different bears where I've been chased by a bear. And one was a polar bear, which I mean, ugh, those are the scariest ones.
Hmm.
And they will get humans for sure. And then the other one, I believe it was a black bear, maybe, but it was a bear for a very short moment and it turned into like a human man person trying to attack.
Ooh.
Yeah. So for me personally, and that was a good example, I would say, of like the context of the dream, because my relationship with bears was not reflected in that experience. So that was, I feel, very instinctual and very representative of like, I feel something that I was running from or afraid of in my dreams at that time.
Yeah. No, I have had dreams of bears before, but none significant, like not a lot of them. But I live in an area where there's a lot of black bears. Like randomly, there's a lot of hiking trails. Like I have been encountered by black bears walking through a hiking area with my family. My husband has gone by himself and like was like 4 feet away from a black bear. And now my husband's huge, like he's like 6'5", like big guy, like so he did better than I probably would have, because the bear kind of just like stood up, sniffed the air, and walked away. Where like you never know how it's gonna you never know how a bear's gonna act, especially if it's a mother bear, because
That's the
they
thing.
are more
Yeah.
aggressive and more
If
protective
there are
of their
babies
children.
around,
Yeah.
it's
um
like, ooh, yeah.
and I'll never forget, we had a school closure because there was a bear on like the elementary school campus. So they closed the school for the day because they're not going to send kids to school with a
Yeah.
bear there.
Yeah, that's wild.
Um, but I love bears. And it's so funny because they are so cute. They're so beautiful. They're so cute. I want to hold them. I want to hug them. I want to love them. And they're animals you cannot touch. And I think that's like torture. It's like, why would you gift us with this beautiful creature
Bears, they're
that
so,
we can't approach?
and yeah, it's like black bears, they're really very shy
Oh
and
yeah,
skittish.
docile.
And so, it's the biggest thing with the black bears is like you better hope it's not a mom and her cubs are
Yep,
nearby. Like
yep.
that's
And they're
the
so
biggest thing.
funny too. They remind me of dogs in a way, black bears. Like the one hiking trip, it was my dad, my mom, me, and my sister, and we were walking through the woods. And maybe like 100 feet from us, there was this black bear on the side of the hill. And it was just doing its thing, minding its business, like didn't even look at us. And of course, we're standing there and we're like, all right, well, what do I do? And, they say when you are around a bear, make a lot of noise, start screaming because it scares them. So that's
Yeah.
when we started clapping our hands and like yelling. This poor bear, I mean, like just like a dog when it's scared and running away, butt down almost on the ground and just shot up. And
Yeah.
I felt so bad. I was like, this poor bear is probably sitting traumatized, expecting to be killed or something from all like something is coming after it. And he was just minding his own business. But yeah,
Right.
you have to be careful around them. Like, even though, black bears are more of the docile bear, they still can get pretty aggressive.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not like a brown bear or a grizzly bear or a polar bear, but they still are bears.
Yeah, they're
And
bears.
I love them so much, but it's that barrier, that disconnect of us not being able to cross paths breaks
Unintended.
my heart.
So one of the qualities that I did like as far as the symbolism, I think maybe something I relate to right now is bears solitude. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
lone animals. So she mentioned the solitude, and then I attributed the hermit energy to the bear, and just she also mentioned that hibernation cycle. So
Yep.
that can also represent, if there's something, if you feel that you might be in a part of your cycle where you are needing rest, relaxation, you need to hibernate, that can point to an ability to recreate yourself after that period of rest and reflection. And so how that can be really important for you at this time, when you see a bear in your dream, especially if it's not threatening and maybe you're in the wild in a forest. There's so many ways to you know connect and see and experience bears in your dream. And luckily I haven't had any experience with it on a trail because I used to walk on trails all the time in Colorado, and I would see a lot of bear poop, but no bear. Or one there was one time it was like way far in the distance, but I've seen elk, and yeah, I think it's
I'm
been pretty.
surprised you don't see more where you live now.
It's like if I was closer to the Adirondack Mountains, then
Hmm.
I think I would. But yeah, they're not down here. It's too populated, and yeah, too many things. I'm like very close to Syracuse, like central area. So, but no,
Yeah, you know what?
so
That makes a lot of
it's weird.
sense.
There's like in New York, unless you're like in the mountains, um wildlife is like you don't really see them, like they're not really threatening. It's like the opposite of Colorado, because it's like I feel there's so many deer and so many other like animals, I guess, for them to feed on. They're not worried about
Hmm.
us, or me, I don't know. But like in
It's
Colorado
interesting
you had
locationally.
bears, mountain lions, like coyotes, in your backyard, like literally.
Yeah.
Like it was
Oh,
crazy
yeah.
that cats were outdoor cats, because it was like, you were getting mountain, and I was very, very close to the foothills, the Flatiron. So it was really
Hmm.
nice. Um,
Yeah, my area, it's got like a mix of like suburbia kind of like and then back roads and
yeah,
neighborhoods that are tucked away past farms, past railroad track, past
yeah,
like the mountains next to the river and like river mountain that's very bare. Like
yeah. No,
the
I know,
fishing.
Pennsylvania has. I feel like I have an idea of kind of where you are, but I know just in general, like when I travel from New York to Maryland, I travel through like just on the outskirts, and I see all of like the mountains and stuff. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I'm
Just
not,
driving on 80, like just driving on 80 in PA
yes,
is just you can tell that there's
it's so
wildlife
beautiful.
because
And I'm
it's
just
so
like,
beautiful and just forest. It's like forest forever. It's gorgeous. But yeah.
you gotta watch out. And that's one of the things I miss about Colorado, like where I was in Boulder, because it was so wild. Like the fact
Hmm.
that you could, like where I was in this specific place, we had a backyard trail. So we would walk like 5 minutes within our neighborhood, and we were already up in like what they call Flagstaff Mountain.
I
And
love that.
yeah, it was in your hiking, like right
Yep.
there in the backyard. It was amazing.
That's
I don't want to talk
beautiful.
about it, I get sad. I get really nostalgic. But yeah, anything else you want to add on bears?
Yeah, so right off the bat, I love the connection for hibernation, the symbol of cycles, life, death, rebirth, either the decision to awaken into activity or rest and renew your energy. One of my favorite things that is mentioned in this book is it's a representation of ever repeating rhythms of nature. Like that's what bears represent.
Mm,
So it really goes into also introspection, defending and protection. And this is interesting. The bear actually represents the Greek goddess Artemis, the goddess of the moon and the woods. And I just thought that was really interesting. And I was thinking about it, and like I've seen this in stories before, like the transformation of the bear into woman, and like how they can transform back and forth between woman and bear. And it just that's an interesting way for it to show up to in your dream if you ever have that experience like that. I don't know. It's an interesting concept. It's different, interesting story. But yeah, I just really love the emphasis of the cycles, the rhythms of nature, things going in circles.
yeah, I really connect with the mama bear. Being a mom, I've been referred to that personally, because I don't care who you are, like I've gotten into it with my own mother, because I'm just like, no, you don't talk to her like that, And it's known that grandmothers, they're technically like also mom. So they can be very disciplined. And I'm mama bear with like
Yep.
fun.
And most
I really,
mothers are,
yeah.
like most mothers have
Once
that
you get it,
mama
that
bear energy.
instinctual,
You
yeah.
have to have it. You have to protect
It's
your
you don't
babies.
care. I'm like,
Yeah.
there are things that I would never do, but when it comes to my child and protection, like, or if anyone hurt her, like, not even a
Yeah. And you've seen that time and time and time again. That makes me think of the bear that kept attacking Leonardo DiCaprio in that one movie, and how like they hold grudges, almost like they're going to come back and get you for the way
I
that you
know they
acted.
do.
Yeah.
Yes. They're
But like
smart.
how
Yeah.
mothers will do whatever they need to do
They'll come
for their
back.
child, and
They
immediately
feel that energy.
yes.
That's
One of
why
the
they're like, act big, like be,
yeah.
because they feel it and they're like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna mess with this.
Yeah, and that immediately brings me back to, of course, true crime, because that's just, you see a lot of mothers who put all their energy into doing everything during these cases, and like this one woman went into a courthouse. Of course, it was like the 70s or 80s, so they weren't checking you the way they are now. But she had a gun hidden under her jacket, and the person who did whatever they did to their child, she shot dead right there. Got arrested, went to jail, didn't care.
Yeah, I didn't care at all.
Nope.
Yeah, that's mama bear through and through. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Just like, no, you're not getting away with this. So yeah, I mean, I think that I the biggest thing is just analyze how the bear shows up in your dream. Like I said, for me, the way the bear showed up in my dream was completely different than this. And now that I'm thinking about it, I want to say I definitely had a dream where it was just a bear and it felt like the way I feel about it. But the ones I can remember that are most recent was me like running in fear. So that's, that within itself is something to sit with.
One of the dreams that I had in regards to bears, I it's so weird to like talk about because it's such a like awkward and weird experience, but it was God, I had to be either high school or pre-high school, and I had a dream that my grandmother was giving birth in a cave, like an ice cave, as if and there were polar bears kind of on the outskirts, and me and my sister were there like in support. And then there was like a whale or a shark, I can't remember which one, sitting in the ocean right next to it. But like that was, I don't even know how to I there,
Where was it like scary? Like was
yeah,
it
it was
fearful of like
anxiety driven. It was like
like
looming doom.
polar bears and sharks? I mean, whales are just intimidating inside. Or I wouldn't say and just, but they're intimidating in size. But sharks and polar bears, you're definitely on the menu. Like they
Yeah,
will.
and then here's the thing too, they weren't scaring me. What scared me was like my grandma being pregnant. Like,
Right, that's
and
true.
I, if you like, that's so I have this weird fear, and I've had it since I was a very little kid, of pregnant people. Like
Yeah.
pregnant people, for some reason, it freaks me out. I have that weird like interest, but I don't. It's so bizarre, and it's
Just
so
like the thought of what is actually happening.
yeah. So that was actually the source of my fear, not even the other things that were actually dangerous within the dream.
Yeah, so that could have been just, a symbolism of your fear or, whatever it was towards your grandmother. Because like the fact that if you're a child, if you're born and older also to be there, and then your grandmother is pregnant, like it's already weird if your grandmother's pregnant and you're that's your grandmother. You're like
Yes,
that
like
that ain't
age and
right.
everything, not like young grandma, like grandma
But
in
yeah,
70s, like
yeah.
60s, 70s. Like it's just a
Yeah,
weird
it was just off.
experience.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, it was almost like all of these animals, specifically the polar bears, were waiting for something, like looming and waiting for something.
The food,
Maybe like the food, yeah.
the offering.
Like the baby was the food.
Yeah. It's like the offering, the
So
sacrifice.
it's so
Oh
messed
my
up.
gosh, we're getting dark here.
Yeah,
All
sorry
right.
guys.
Sorry. It's still,
Trigger
well,
warning
I'm about to
post.
say it's still Scorpio season, so we can be morbid.
Yes. Yes, well, we're Scorpio risings, we're morbid all the
We're
time.
more about all the time. Okay. So now that that's understood,
Yep.
all right, so let's go to our final dream animal symbol, which is birds. And birds, I love birds. There's so
Me
many.
too.
This is such an expansive dream symbol that there's no way we're gonna touch everything.
Oh no, there's definitely going to be a birds part two and possibly part three
Yeah, yeah,
because
like
like
specific
I
birds.
have
Yeah.
like maybe 7, 8 different types of birds,
Mhm.
and that's a lot.
So birds in general, they're a universal symbol of transformation and the progress towards wholeness and harmony. So that's what she mentioned in the book,
Hmm.
right? And I would say they're also a universal symbol of messengers. She
Hmm.
mentioned messengers
Yep,
of the divine, of spirit, like especially when you think about ravens and crows,
absolutely.
owls, like they're just so majestic and just so like I was gonna say otherworldly, but the fact of like another one of their big qualities is that they fly. Like we
Hmm.
can't fly. We will never, or we unless we do it in dreams, we don't know what that is like, and just that
Yeah,
viewpoint as a bird, that bird's eye view, that has a lot of meaning and symbolism within itself. Like it's
absolutely.
so expansive just in the general context of birds.
And something that's interesting to mention, or interesting to me, is I feel like I have a really strong connection with birds. And I wonder if it's that element of air that they represent, the ability to be like flying and free. And, you and I both having a lot of air symbolism within our charts, how that aligns to our connection with birds and how much they show up in our dreams. So it's a very interesting topic for sure. And I really like that you mentioned spirit because what I saw was that in one of my books said that in mythology birds often represent the soul. So that's an interesting way to look at your dreams and interpret them.
Yeah. When I think about the birds that I've experienced in my dreams thus far, it's always been very like captivating. Like
Mm-hmm.
animals,
Yes.
like animals in general, except for the bear, but I think because there was so much like because it was more of an anxious dream, it kind of took away from that divine presence. But like generally, animals in my dream definitely have that very like divine, like, you know,
Yes.
they stop you in your tracks and you're very focused.
Yes.
Whenever birds are present in my dreams, it's like there's a message. There's
Yeah.
something important here. It turns into a profound dream.
And it's always, I don't know if you get this, but I get this too. I'm sure you get this, but like when I have a dream about a bird, they catch your attention. It feels otherworldly. And it's literally like they're staring into your soul, beckoning you to pay attention. Like every single dream that I've had where a bird is there, it's almost like I'm in the dream and time stops and I
Yeah.
get super close to the bird without moving. Like it's just like my view of the bird has been pulled in and there is a like connection, like they're looking directly into my eyes and into my soul and it feels otherworldly.
Yeah. And I know you had a dream not too long ago. Was it an owl in the dream or there was something, and I know it was really profound and it was like definitely a spiritual type dream. I don't know
So
if
I have two bird references that I'm going to share from for like these dreams that I've had. One of them is an owl, and one of them is like a crane heron like bird. Um, and both of those are very interesting and mysterious types of birds. I mean, owls right off the bat, you have like the wiseness, the wisdom, the mysteriousness, and just knowledge, which is interesting, especially if, you know, the bird represents the soul, and the type of bird brings in the message of your soul. It's like you're being guided towards like inner wisdom and inner knowledge. But yeah, I'm should I share that now or
Yeah.
should I wait?
No, go for it.
Oh, okay. So the dream that I'm going to share, this is about the owl. And basically, just I'm going to make it really short and I'm not going to tell the whole dream. I'm just going to tell like the part where I get to the bird. So there's danger outside of the house I'm in, and there's danger within the house. So we're moving from level to level. And I get into this room with a bunch of people, lock the door, and there is this huge, like, there's a huge window. I don't remember what type of window they're called. I don't have the knowledge
Like,
at the
is it a
moment.
bay window? Is it like kind of
Kind of, it's kind of like a full
turret?
room bay window. Like
Like a
imagine the shape of
turret.
a
So
bay
it's a turret.
window, but it's your entire side of the
Like it's like
house.
a castle type window. I
Yes.
think it's like a turret. I think that's what it's called. But
So I'm looking around for an exit and like paying attention to the noises around me, the carpet under my feet, the smell in the room. And all of a sudden, I look outside and what I see is like trees on this side, a gap, and it's just black sky with like some speckles of stars and the moon. And I see a owl flying by. And in that moment, halfway through point, the owl freezes in time and I freeze in time. And it's like that whole thing is zoomed. So it feels like I'm outside and floating right in front of the side of this owl as it's flying by. And we're in connection. There's some kind of intensity between the two of us. And when in that next moment, I'm back to being in the house and I'm watching it continue to fly by the rest of the window. And at that moment, I make a decision to look in one of the behind the doors of one of the rooms that we were in to escape. And that was really interesting. It was almost like it was giving me some kind of knowledge on where to go. It was like
yeah.
almost like without telling me where to go, it gave me it injected that decision, that idea in my head, and I was
Oh,
able to move forward.
yeah.
So that was a really, really, really profound dream. And I love that. And the other bird dream I had to do with like a heron crane type bird. It wasn't quite either of those things, but it was, I had some random stuff going on at work in the dream. And I went outside and I was talking to this one guy, and behind him there was a tree stump. And on this tree stump stood this heron crane type bird, tall with blues and grays and whites. And the same thing happened. It stopped time and it made this connection with me. And it was like I was right in front of it. And then it zoomed back and the crane heron jumped off of this stump and kind of walked up to the person I was talking to and started like pecking it, like attacking this boy or this guy. And I kind of sent this message of like stop, this is, I'm fine. Like almost like it was territorial of me. It was protecting me from what it thought was a threat.
Hmm. Wow.
So those were the two most recent bird dreams that I have had.
Yeah, it's like they just in those shares, those dreams, they definitely have that like divine quality and that messenger and guidance. And I know one of the symbolisms of birds and dreams is like the freedom and the like intuition, the communication, the insight, like that divine wisdom, which is again very air, element
Yep.
attributes as well. And that was like really, really clear in your dream. And for me personally, just very briefly, and I should have looked it up, but I don't, I kind of remember it in my head, but I know there was a dream in which it was A precognitive dream, it was the one where I saw the moon phase, and I like went to, or no, went to see some ladies, and they,
Yes,
the fortune teller ladies, and I got
I
them.
remember that.
And at before that happened, I had saw a bird. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember what kind of bird it is. It's very hazy, but nonetheless, the point is the bird had a really strong presence in the dream. And the dream as a whole was precognitive with a message, like a heads up about something that was coming through. And so, just in that experience, it also, affirms that message, the wisdom, the insight, also that intuition, and in that interesting that dream, there was an interesting connection of like the moon, the phase
Yeah.
timing in reference to the bird and just everything happening. It was all connected. It felt very otherworldly. And I really love when, birds show up in that way. And I have a strong connection to birds too. Like whenever I hear crows, whenever they're very strong, I know like my grandmother is around specifically. Like there's like she's communicating something, or I just know that like pay attention. Like there's some information coming through when crows are very, very loud. And it's usually around this time of year. I've noticed like the end of, or like after Halloween, or around that time, and going towards the winter. Like definitely the winter
Hmm.
are very prevalent because I feel like no other birds are around really. Like they've
Yeah.
migrated. And so you hear the crows and they have a lot going on.
They have
Um,
like the house to
started
themselves.
right in this part of the season. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like they're super chatty. And even a couple days ago, there were two ravens that were like basically courting each other. And like it sounded different. I didn't even realize that it was ravens because they sound like crows, but it was like deeper and it caught my attention. And
Yeah.
my daughter's father was like, oh, those are like, he actually saw them. He was like, oh, there are two ravens out. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty intense and awesome.
The
So, yeah,
Ravens
no, birds
definitely
are,
have a different notes. I remember
yeah.
going to visit my friend up in Virginia, and she had gone to a college up there. And when I pulled into the parking lot after like the 6 hour drive, it was like early in the morning, so the light had just come up, and I got out of my car, and the like foresty area right next to me was filled with ravens, and I was like just blown away by how beautiful and how many there were and how much noise they were making. They were so loud, and yeah, they that different
Yeah, like it's
sound,
like
like
in their
it's
throat, almost like kind
yeah.
of like a throat. Yeah.
And I
The
went in and I was
birds.
like, oh my God, all these ravens, they're so beautiful. And my friend was just like, they're so annoying. They're so loud.
Right. She probably hears them all the time. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah. So Christopher is here. Welcome, Christopher. Thanks for saying hello in
Chris.
the chat. And then Christopher says that owls, for him, have always been extraterrestrial. Yeah.
Yes.
In dreams, yeah, they just feel, the fact that they can like turn their heads around like that, like behind them. I'm
Well,
just
look, the amount of creatures on this earth that are alien like is insane. Like
yes,
from deep sea to in the sky to in the
so true.
forests,
So
in the
true.
rainforests. It like even camels. Camels are in deserts and they hold their water in their body. So they have
So
water to
cool.
survive in the desert. They're so
So cool.
weird. Like
Yeah.
there's so many. I don't think people really, and even insects. Like insects are so,
Insects are
I
vicious.
think they're weird. They're weird. And like the more lately I've been really like I've faced a lot of my fears around insects for the last years now, and now I'm at a point where like every time I see one I like talk to them. And it's very interesting to see how each of their little personalities are different. Like some if I talk to some of the flies at my work, and sometimes they'll sit with me all day. They'll sit next to me. They'll hang out. They'll like if I move, they move with me. And then other ones will not even stop and bot. Like they're like, forget you. Like you're gonna kill me, whatever. but it's just they're so we're the furthest disconnected from them because they're the type of creature that we just don't personally relate to. So we
Yeah.
see them as being not, as I don't know, personable. Like we just don't get them. And I think that's what intrigues me so much about them is that they're just so alien. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Insects are, I mean, their whole situation, they're brutal. Like the way they attacked each other. Like, I mean, just think about spiders. Like,
Oh, I'm just
I mean,
thinking
I
about
guess spiders
grasshopper
are
not
arachnids. They're not even
grasshoppers,
technically insects, but
praying
we
mantis.
pray. Oh, oof.
Praying mantis are the
Brutal.
scariest. Can you just imagine what they would be like if they were like huge?
Oh,
Like I think about them too. I'm like, first of all, great. I don't know why that's not the symbol for like femininity. The
oh,
the woman is just so strong.
supreme,
She's
supreme.
just she's like, we're done. We're getting it on, and then I'm gonna kill
Yeah,
you, and like whatever.
and
Like,
we're done.
just sorry that I realized that clap was
I'm
really
gonna
really loud.
unalive you.
But it's just it's so crazy. The creatures on this earth that are alien-esque,
Yeah.
I question
There's
their
like there's so many animals. We haven't even touched any of the animals in water, I'm realizing. So when we do
oh,
another
this is gonna be so
animal
much.
series, we're gonna have to definitely do some water animals, some water creatures.
Oh,
And
do you want me to go through? I have some birds that I can touch on briefly,
yeah,
just they
yeah.
might be
Let's go
showing
ahead.
up
We
in your
can
dream.
we can wrap it up with that and then we'll close this out. The animal or the dream symbols in general, not just animals, they tend to be longer episodes because they're just so deep and expansive and there's so much to talk about, especially in reference to our own dreams and how
Yeah.
we relate to these symbols in our waking life. And so we're definitely going to share more on these topics and but yeah, just let's talk a little bit more about birds and then we'll close it out.
Okay, that sounds great. So right off the bat, crows and ravens, they usually represent death within the dream. And it doesn't mean literal death. This could be death of a trait, death of a project, like the ending of something important in your life and moving forward, closing that door and moving forward. Swans are a really interesting one that show up in dreams. I've had dreams about swans before, and a lot of the times they represent love, patience, transformation. And because they're water birds, they really have a connection with emotion and like divine power. Penguins, they're flightless, so they tend to represent being weighed down by emotions or situations in your life that you are not facing. Um, Balance, like the black and white of their, I guess, coats, represents balance, light and dark. And they do also represent love too, like depending on like the context of the
Saying like
dream,
mate for life.
they mate for life, which is, I know that's something that me and my husband like share. Like we call each other penguin because we mate for life. I know that's so corny, I know. But and then peacocks are an interesting ones. And they're often associated with phoenixes. So they represent rebirth, ego, inflation, pride, elegance, and their tails blending of color represents blendings that might be needed in your life. Ostriches represent truth and justice of cosmic order. Did not expect that.
Yeah.
Denial, unwillingness to examine or accept situations, to think they bury their head in the sand. So they're hiding from a situation.
Definitely.
Cranes and herons represent justice, diligence, purity, cycles, and that divine energy. And of course, this one is a mythological creature, but I'm going to mention it anyway because it's big in like our media and in our different stories that we've read. But phoenixes, they are representative of transformation, resurrection, regeneration, completion, end of chapters, new beginnings, and new perspectives. So those are some examples. There are many birds that we can go into,
So
but
many
there's so many, but I just wanted to
hummingbirds,
do a handful.
woodpeckers,
Yes, chickens,
doves,
hens,
yeah,
uh,
roosters. There's a lot.
oh my God, there's so many.
Yeah. So we will be back with more, but those were all pretty much on point. Like I said, I have a connection with the crows and the ravens, and I definitely
Hmm.
feel that connection with death. And I feel,
Yep,
a lot in reference to communication from the other side. So bringing in that messenger energy, communications, the air element, and then integrating that with the death.
yep,
If of course paying attention to the context of the dreams, but if you've recently been having dreams about people that you are close to that have transitioned, and then you're seeing crows and ravens, that could be a possible indication of that. Then also when I thought
absolutely.
about ravens too, I thought about, Game of Thrones and shows
Yep.
in books like that where it's like people communicate with ravens. And so
Hmm.
and yeah, just I just love them. Like that
And I
community.
feel like ravens, to me, crows and ravens are very associated with Scorpio, like
Oh yeah.
that deep black well, that infinite well. That to me, in like is the raven crow is bird form of that.
Hmm. Yeah, and then Christopher mentioned hawks. There are different types of hawks, which we didn't
Yep.
even touch on. Hawks and eagles.
Eagles.
Yeah,
Oh my
there's
God.
actually
Who said the thing?
a
Oh my.
red-tailed hawk that lives in my neighborhood, which I love. And I know it's a female. She's big. And I know red-tailed hawks, when I looked in my animal totem book, and this is a really good book, and they mentioned about like the Kundalini energy because of that red, so that root and sacral chakra, and it's on like her tail wing, basically. I don't know if that's the right term, but just like that back wing, like you see
Mhm.
underneath like the red.
Yep.
So that felt really true, and just like that like passion and like feminine quality, because like with the red tail
Mhm.
hawks, they're the female hawks are bigger than the males, and they are kind of dominant as
Yep.
well, and huntresses, I guess, if that's a word. So that would be interesting to encounter that in your dream. I could definitely see that showing up in that way. But yeah, there are
Absolutely.
just so many birds where we'll definitely get specific with it, but we just wanted to just briefly touch on how they might show up in the dream space. So I feel pretty good with this. How do you feel?
So considering we're a half hour over what we usually do, I feel like we're pretty good.
Right, we're good. We can keep going as always, but
Of course.
life. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching or listening. If you're listening to the replay on Spotify, definitely join us live here on Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel to engage with us, ask questions, comment, share your dreams and perspectives. Also, if you're curious and would like us to interpret a dream for you, you can submit your dream at the innerversepodcast@gmail.com. I think I got everything.
And one more thing, make sure if you're interested, of course, you check out our Instagram, go and follow us. We are putting polls in our stories, we're putting sneak peeks of the next topic. We are putting in fun little graphics just to help you with dreams and nightmares and whatnot. References, like go check it out and feel free to tell us what you think too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you everyone for listening, for being here, and thank you for the likes, the follows, all of the things. And we will see you in the next episode. And have sweet dreams.
Bye.